Hi guys, welcome to Linux The Basics. I'm Sophie, and this is the first video in our Linux series. I'll just go over a very basic overview of what exactly Linux is and what we might be learning about soon. So what is Linux? Linux is the open source kernel. Although it has no owner, Linus Torvalds created the Linux kernel in 1991, and Tux the Linux penguin is Linux's iconic mascot. Now, just in case if you guys don't exactly remember what an OS is, it's operating system, and it's basically just a type of computer like Mac or Windows. So Linux is its own type of computer, if that's easier. So how is Linux used? Because Linux is much less user-friendly than other operating systems, it is not often used outside of businesses or big brain tech people, so you probably have not used it before, but hopefully you've heard of it. And it is often used to support the huge databases for businesses because Linux is very powerful and useful in the tech industry. So why is Linux so important? So even if you've never heard of Linux, its kernel is so popular that you definitely have used it sometime in your life. Android, which uses the Linux kernel, your parents' coffee machine, or even your car is most likely based on Linux if there's a kind of smart system inside your car. And many businesses are dependent on Linux, so knowing how to use it will give you a competitive edge in Cyber Patriot 2, not just the job market. So open source was highlighted on the slide. Well, what does it mean? Open source just basically means that Linux is public and totally free, no owner, no rules. So companies can use the free Linux kernel to make their own computer systems called distributions, distros, or flavors like Ubuntu, Fedora, and Debian. And CyberAGs uses the Ubuntu distro the most. So no rules. Yeah, like you can honestly just download a Linux kernel anytime and do whatever you want to do with it. I mean, you can download Ubuntu like iOS file entirely for free, and you could just delete everything on your computer and replace it with Ubuntu if you wanted to, but you probably shouldn't do that for your main host computer. And but then this means that there's no like one managing company that owns the Linux kernel, and so everybody who makes software on Linux plays by their own rules. So prepare for Linux to be way less consistent and organized than Windows, because there's not that much of one rule format that all commands follow. For Windows, there's one company that makes sure everything is kind of same and consistent, where everything that's related to this command is here and this command is here and like that, but that's not the case in Linux. Yeah, but what is a kernel exactly? So the kernel is not, go back on what I said earlier. I just said operating system just so that what Linux was just would be a bit easier to understand. But the kernel is actually kind of a bridge between the system hardware to the application software. In just simple English, the kernel is just translates back and forth what you see on the screen on the computer magic to all of like the number computer magic that happens inside. And every computer has a kernel, it's just necessary for it to function. So just to make it a bit easier, so applications, basically what you see. Like so this is what everything the computer applies. So applications would be your screen, your apps, your browser, everything like that. And then CPU, memory, and devices, this is all stuff inside the computer, like the actual processing, the things that go on. And the kernel is kind of a bridge between this. And even if you already have this in your applications, so what different distros are is basically that your computer already comes with a CPU and memory devices. So if a distro has a kernel but different applications, different distros of Linux use the same Linux kernel, but the applications and the use of it is changed to how the kernel developer wants it to be. And how do you use Linux? This will be our next video. Unlike Windows, 99% of your Linux experience will be through the terminal, the stuff you see in hacker shows, especially when securing it. And it can look a bit scary at first, but soon you will come to realize how much faster and easier it is to just use the terminal once you get used to it. And that's all we have for today. We'll see you next video.